Okay, so we're back with Thomas Taylor's dissertation on Aristotle's philosophy. We are on this topic of time still. So time was the measure of motion according to prior and posterior. And we're kind of in the middle of this section here, but we'll just pick up right where we left off. Since, however, time is the measure of motion and of being moved, and it measures motion by giving a definite extent to a certain motion, which measures the whole, just as a yard measures length by giving a definite extent to a certain magnitude, which measures the whole. This being the case, for motion to be in time is nothing else than for time to measure it and its essence, for at the same time it measures motion and the essence of motion. And this it is for motion to be in time, viz. For time to measure its essence. But it is evident that this is also for other things to be in time, viz. For their essence to be measured by time. For to have a subsistence in time is one of two things, one of which is then to be when time is, and the other, just as we say, that certain things are in number. Okay, so to say that something is in time, we can either say, one, that it is when time is, so it is like contemporaneous with time, I guess, and the other, certain things are in number, certain things are in time. I'm not quite grasping that distinction. Oh, my screen capture is off for YouTube?
Well, it's on. It's just shifted.
I see. Yeah, thank you for catching that. It looked fine a second ago. All right. We'll go back up to footnote 7. All right. So Aristotle, having shown what time is and that the properties which are said to belong to it accord with its definition, and also that we assert things to be properly in time which are comprehended by time, now indicates what that is according to which everything is said to be in time. His explanation, however, on account of its length, possesses a certain obscurity. But through motion as a medium, he infers that to all things a subsistence in time is this, to have their being measured by time. And this very properly, for the existence of everything is the energy and motion of its being. Okay. Existence of everything is the energy and motion of its being. I assume this is Simplicius. Since time, therefore, as he says, is the measure of motion, a subsistence in time, both to motion and to other things according to their motion, is for their being to be measured by time. But he shows how motion is in time as follows. Time measures motion, but to measure motion, which does not subsist at once, but which has its being in becoming to be, is properly the same as to measure its being, that is, so far as it is motion. For motion measures, and this according to the interval in which the motion is, when we say that there is a motion of a stadium. This, however, stadium being that unit of length, I forget like approximately how large that is. This, however, has a measure according to accident, and not so far as motion. For in consequence of that which is prior remaining, it has a measure of this kind, but as motion, and as having its being in becoming to be, it has for its measure time as long as the motion continues, for this is the measure of its being which subsists in becoming to be. And we may now see that Aristotle clearly unfolds the manner in which time is the measure of motion, that it is so according to the extension of the being of motion, according to which also it especially subsists. For in motion, as Alexander says, to be and to be in motion are the same, just as in other things which have their being in becoming to be. And on this account, to measure motion is the same thing as the being of motion. Okay, yeah. I'm not following everything perfectly here. I'm also not going to get hung up on this, but this is an interesting statement here. To measure motion is the same thing as the being of motion. Another interesting statement was up here. Said the existence of a thing is its the measure of its energies or something. Where was that? I'd like to see that again. Oh yeah, here it is. Since time, therefore, or rather, above, and this very properly, for the existence of everything is the energy and motion of its being. Okay, and then here on this account, to measure motion is the same thing as the being of motion. Since, therefore, the essence of motion is an extended energy, for it is the entelechia of that which may be moved, motion and the being of motion are the same. Okay. Hence Aristotle, having said that time is the measure of motion, adds also, and of being moved. Not adding this as something different, but indicating that motion is energy and that time is the measure of energy. But that motion and the being of motion are measured by time, he shows, from every assumed motion being bounded by time. For future time is not yet, and therefore is not bounded. For as he who says that time measures the being of man says this, that time bounds and measures as many years as man lives, in like manner he who says that the being of motion is measured by time says nothing else than that time measures it so far as it is motion. In other things also, which have not their subsistence in becoming to be, but subsist wholly at once, as in man, the being of man, that is, the interval of his existence, is measured by time, but a yard or something else of this kind measures the man himself, that is, the interval of the man. But in motion, time measures both the being of motion and motion itself. For in motion, the being of motion, which is measured by time, and motion itself concur. Okay. If, however, these things are true, what will that be of motion which is measured by magnitude? If, as has been observed, we not only measure magnitude by motion, but also motion by magnitude, it is evident that it will be the interval of motion, which is the same in subject with the extension of its being. Okay, so when we measure motion according to magnitude, we are measuring the interval of motion, which is the same in subject with the extension of its being. For motion is energy and is not permanent, but it is measured as a permanent interval by magnitude through its relation to magnitude, but as an extension of being, it is measured by time. Since, however, these are the same in subject, it is very properly said that motion and the being of motion are the same. Having also said that time is the measure of motion, he adds how it measures it, for everything which is measured appears to be measured by a certain peculiar part, since it is this part which measures the whole. This, therefore, will be the case with motion, if it is measured by motion. For a part of motion is motion, and everything continued may be divided into equal, definite parts. How, therefore, is motion said to be measured by time? Time, says he, bounds a part of motion, which part measures the whole motion, and this is bounded by the prior and posterior now. Okay, so that's a good enough point. Time is measured, or motion is measured by a part of motion. Time measures, or the interval of time measures the part that's going to be the measure, like the second hand ticking, I guess. But in a similar manner, time measures motion, as a yard measures magnitude, not being a part of it, but by bounding a certain part of it, through which part, so often assumed, it measures the whole. So rather than a motion that is part of a whole motion, like I guess the ticking of a second hand, there's the interval of it, abstractly considered as a magnitude, that bounds the part of the motion. And then so often is that empty interval of time is assumed, it measures the whole. Like maybe it's something like that here. Since, therefore, motion bounded by time, as for instance that of an hour, measures the whole motion, on this account, motion is said to be measured by time. But here it may be doubted, if time is the number and measure of motion, how anything else besides motion is measured by time and is in time, so as that it may be asserted that this, to other things, also is to be in time. To be in time is to be measured by time. For other things besides motion, probably. So how is that, given what we've said about motion so far? In the second place, how will this man and this horse and everything else which has not its being in becoming to be, so far as it is possible to assert this of things in generation, i.e. of anything which is an object of sense, be in time, if time has its being in becoming to be, and it is necessary that what is said to be in time should be coextended with time? In answer to the first doubt, it may be said that motion is indeed energy and has its being in becoming to be, but the being of motion is precedentiously in time. Okay. And is measured by time. So the being of motion is already always in time. But that other things which are said to be in time, such as man or horse, according to their essential motion, which signifies the existence of essence in energy, and an energy neither perfect nor stable, but having its being in becoming to be, these things, according to this, are in time, being composed from generation and corruption. Okay, so I think what's being said is motion is through and through always in time already, but then other things which are in time, which aren't motions, like a man who has an essence that is not a motion, he has energies which signify the existence of his essence. Those energies are neither perfect nor stable because they're belonging to becoming to be, and so are generated and corrupted. So those things are in time insofar as they possess energy and motion, I guess, which represents their essence. But in a certain manner, then we can say that their essence is in time, even if, like, properly it's not a motion, the essence itself. But here that's accomplished because from essence we convert into energy with the activity of the essence of the animal. Other things, therefore, besides motion, receiving their essences in time, Aristotle says that these also, according to their motion, which is an extension of being, are in time. Right, so even if things have, for Aristotle, maybe they don't have eternal essences, but even things which have essences which are not motive of their nature or their self-moving principles, not moved, right? Like this, I think Aristotle treats the soul as an unmoved mover. So then it's not a kind of motion, but it causes motion, and those motions that it causes are obviously measured by time. Hence, things which are properly beings and which have not their being in becoming to be, and which Plato and Aristotle call perpetual, these are not in time, but in eternity, which abides in one. And if this be true, the second doubt also is solved, for generated essences are called temporal according to the flux and extension of their proper being, and thus time is a measure of a flux and extension according to being. Simplicius adds, and thus, as it appears to me, are the philosophical discussions of Aristotle intellectually and accurately delivered concerning time. Okay. Well, I mean, I felt like that was somewhat helpful, maybe. Back up to Aristotle, but it is evident that this is also for other things to be in time, viz., for their essence to be measured by time. For to have a subsistence in time is one of two things, one of which is then to be when time is, and the other, just as we say, that certain things are in number. And this signifies either as a part and property of number, and in short, that it is something belonging to number, or that it is the number of it. So something can be in number as a property of number, or as the number of something. But since time is number, the now, the prior, and things of this kind are so in time as the monad, the even, and the odd are in number. Okay. So temporal things are in time in the same way that properties of number and particular numbers are in number. And then the other way was to say that the existence of motion was precedenteously in time. So let's read these two things again. One of which is then to be when time is. The other in number, as in things have a temporal nature, so they participate of time. Maybe the way to put it is like, on the one hand, something can be in time by participating of a temporal nature. On the other hand, things can be in time as a matter of when they have their existence. So the one is more common sense, in time, existing according to this motion, and then the other is having a temporal nature, just like things having numerical properties are in number, so to speak. Okay. But things are in time as in number. If this then is the case, things are comprehended by number in the same manner as things in place are comprehended by place. It is also evident that to be in time is not then to be when time is, as neither to be in motion nor to be in place is then to be when motion and place are. For if a subsistence in anything were of this kind, all things would be in anything whatever, and heaven would be in a grain of millet. For when a grain of millet is, the heaven also is, but this is an accidental circumstance. Okay. This is a little confusing how he gets to the grain. I guess he's saying time is not to be when. To be in time is not then to be when time is. For if a subsistence in anything were of this kind, all things would be in anything whatever. I guess because time is always, so if to be in time is to be when time is, then everything equally would be in time. It's a little odd. Not sure I'm parsing the point Aristotle's making here. That's all right. That, however, necessarily follows, viz., that to a thing which is in time, there is a certain time when that thing is, and that to a thing in motion, there is then motion. But since that which is in time is as in number, a certain time may be assumed greater than everything which is in time. Hence it is necessary that all things which are in time should be comprehended by time, just as other things which are comprehended in anything, as for instance that which is in place by place. Okay, so time extends broader than any particular thing in time. 8, footnote 8. Aristotle, having observed that motion is said to be in time, as measured by time, in the next place enumerates the significations of a subsistence in time, in order that it may become evident how temporal things, such as the now, the prior, and the posterior, and the like, and also how other things are in time. For a subsistence in time signifies two things. one then to be when time is, but the other as when we say a thing is in number. And this is twofold. For it is either in number because it is a part or property of number, as 2 is a part and the odd is a property, or because there is a number of such things, and they are numbered, as 10 horses and 10 oxen in number. Since, therefore, time is number, as is the subsistence of things in number, such also is the subsistence of things in time. Hence, the now and the prior so subsist in time as the monad and the odd in monadic number, for the latter are the parts or accidents of number, but the former of time. But motion and other things, which are not parts or passive qualities of time, subsist in time in the same manner as 10 must subsist in number through being numerated by it. As therefore of things which are thus said to be in number, there is always a greater number, so of things which are in time, there is always a greater time. For time is a certain number, but if this be the case, then things in time are comprehended by time, and things in place are comprehended by place. And here we may see how Aristotle understood the agreement of time with place and number prior to the things which afterwards unfold it, but this is the more proper signification of a subsistence in time. For to say that to be in time is to be when time is less properly said to be in time, since thus that which is immovable may be said to be in motion, if it is when motion is. Okay. So I guess the first idea of time to be when time is kind of makes things that are immobile participate of motion, because, and that I'm not so clear on, because why? But this is the more proper signification of a subsistence in time. For to say that to be in time is to be when time is less properly said to be in time, since thus that which is immovable may be said to be in motion if it is when motion is. As opposed to, I guess, it having a temporal nature but not moving with the flow of time. Time may pass, it has a temporal nature, it's in time in one respect, but it's not, it doesn't have its subsistence in the transition of time. I don't know, I think that's a little obscure, but what does this differ from saying that heaven is in a grain of millet, and in short, everything in everything, and the great in the least, since when the heaven is, then also a grain of millet is? It happens, however, I feel like Simplicius, and this is Simplicius, I'm pretty sure, is just trying to, like, brute force Aristotle's logic into working here, but, like, I see no necessary connection in the last two sentences whatsoever. I could be missing it, but anyway. It happens, however, to many things to subsist together or at once, which the words when and then signify. But for one thing to be in another is for one thing to be comprehended by another. And to these, a subsistence together is consequent, but it does not follow that because they subsist together on this account, they are in each other. Just slow down here a little bit. It happens, however, to many things to subsist together or at once when the words when and then are signify. But for one thing to be in another is for one thing to be comprehended by another. Okay, so if to be in time is to be with time, then that's a bad meaning of comprehended by. It's not really in time if it's just contemporaneous with time. Because all things are together at the same time, but then are all things in that time? I mean, obviously, we've already seen in one respect, yes, but we should say that things that are not actively in motion are in time in the sense that things are in number, which are numerical. And to these, a subsistence together is consequent, But it does not follow that because they subsist together, on this account they are in each other. Okay. Many things subsist together but aren't comprehended or don't mutually comprehend. But because they are in each other, on this account they subsist together, and because both are in the same time. So subsisting together doesn't entail being in each other, but being in each other does entail subsisting together. Things, however, which are not in time, such as eternal natures, though, when time exists, they are, yet they cannot be said to subsist together or at once, because things which subsist at once are in the same time, nor are the terms when and then adapted to these. Okay. But Aristotle, having shown that things which are properly said to be in time subsist as comprehended by time, in the same manner as things in number are comprehended by number, delivers a certain argument of things which are thus in time, and at the same time a cause of their being said thus to subsist. For of things which are properly in time, it is always possible to assume a greater time than that of their existence, for thus they will be comprehended by and will be properly said to be in time, as in place and in number. Hence, says Alexander, things perpetual are not in time, since time does not comprehend their being. And if indeed he calls things eternal perpetual, as Plato does in the Timaeus, when speaking of the paradigm of the universe, he says, quote, "The nature, therefore, of the animal itself being perpetual, he speaks well." Alexander speaks well, if by perpetual he means eternal. For the eternal is not in time, nor is comprehended by time. But if he calls the perpetual that which subsists according to the whole of time, it is not true that this is not in time, if it is only supposed so to subsist as to have its being in time. So even if it's not comprehended, if like time doesn't extend beyond it on both sides, it's still in time, like numerical things are in number. But things which have their being in becoming to be are of this kind, and which do not, like things eternal, wholly subsist at once. If, therefore, other things which are in generation are in time according to motion, are in time according to motion, nothing hinders things which have a never-failing subsistence in becoming to be, whether they are changed according to energy or according to quality or according to place, from being in time. But a subsistence in time appears to be in every respect similar to a subsistence in number, because time is number. For of things in number, it is possible to assume a greater number, because everything numbered is a finite number. But it is possible to assume a number greater than every finite number, because number may be increased to infinity, just as magnitude may be infinitely diminished. Of things in place, however, it is not always possible to assume a greater place, for if place is the boundary of that which comprehends, or the apt position of things which are separated, place will be co-circumscribed by place. But if place is an interval, partial bodies, indeed, which are in place, will always have a certain place surpassing them, into which also they will frequently be transferred. But the whole will no longer have a greater place, for the whole receives the whole. Hence, according to every signification of place, it may be truly said that it is not possible to assume a place greater than every place, as it is of every time and of every number. But Aristotle uses the example of place merely to show that things in time are comprehended by time, in the same manner as things in place are comprehended by place, despite that one disanalogy. Okay, and I don't quite remember the precise definition of place that Aristotle landed on. We'll come back and check that at some point. But let's keep going. Hence, that which is in time will suffer something from time, just as we are accustomed to say that time consumes, that all things grow old from time, and are forgotten through time. But nothing learns, nor becomes young, nor beautiful through time, for time is of itself rather the cause of corruption, because it is the number of motion, and motion removes that which exists from its state or condition. Well, that's pretty interesting. We have like a Aristotelian explanation of entropy here. This is very, very good. Let's read this sentence again. Hence, that which is in time will suffer something from time. Okay. I don't know why the hence is there, because it doesn't seem connected to the previous thought, but... So, things that are in time will suffer something from time, just as we are accustomed to say that time consumes, that all things grow old from time or are forgotten through time. But nothing learns, nor becomes young, nor beautiful through time, for time is of itself rather the cause of corruption, because, and here's the reason, it is the number of motion, and motion removes that which exists from its state or condition. So that seems like an important point. I feel like they're repeating the footnote number here, because I think this was 8. Before, back up here, this was 7, right? It doesn't matter. Yeah, 7, and then 8A, and now we're on 8B, I guess. Okay. Editor messed up. All right. Yeah, so motion removes that which exists from its state or condition. Let's get Simplicius on this. Aristotle, having shown that whatever is in time is comprehended by time, and is so comprehended as that there is time prior and posterior to it, in the next place adds that things which are in time suffer from time, for we are accustomed to say that time consumes, that all things grow old from time, and are forgotten through time, which things are corruptive of essence, life, and knowledge. For we do not, in like manner, say that we learn or become young or beautiful through time, because time appears to be rather a cause of corruption, since it is the number of motion, but motion is a departure and mutation of being from its state or condition. Hence time, being something belonging to motion, removes that which exists in it from its condition, and causes it to be changed, since it is the number of the mutation and aggression of every being which it contains. But Aristotle, when he says that time is the cause of corruption, with very proper caution adds the word rather. For it is evident that time appeared not only the cause of corruption, but also of generation and unfolding to him who said, quote, long and innumerable time brings to light things immanifest and conceals things manifest. Okay, so rather qualifies the statement so that it's not that time is always only a cause of corruption. It is likewise not only the cause of oblivion, but of learning, for the same person says, time causes me to know. So Aristotle was stating a general tendency, and supposedly this rather is supposed to be enough of a qualifier where exceptions are admitted. But Simonides describes that which is wisest by time. For by this, says he, all men discover and learn. And evenness from both these circumstances makes time to be the wisest and most ignorant of all things. Aristotle himself also says in the third book that there is a twofold motion, one from form to privation, the other from privation to form. Hence, time not only causes an aggression from form, but also from privation. But it is on this account rather the cause of corruption, because generated natures always appear to be generated in time, but not by time, because the efficient cause, as for instance the builder of a house, is different from time. Corruptible natures, however, not only appear to be corrupted in time, but also by time, since nothing else is seen to be the cause of the corruption of the house. In like manner, a preceptor is the cause of learning, but time appears to be sufficient to oblivion. Okay. I think it's sufficient to just remember this statement from Aristotle that time is of itself rather the cause of corruption, because it is the number of motion, and motion removes that which exists from its state or condition. Motion removes that which exists from its state or condition. So that's the reason for Aristotle's general principle of entropy. Pretty cool. So that it is evident that eternal beings, so far as they are eternal, are not in time, for they are not comprehended by time, nor is their being measured by time. As a token of the truth of this, they do not suffer anything as not being in time. Okay. Footnote 9. Aristotle now, as a certain corollary from what has been above said concerning time, collects that eternal beings, so far as they are eternal beings, are not in time. For they are neither comprehended by time, so as that a longer time of their being may be assumed, nor do they suffer anything from time. What then shall we say of perpetual motion? For a circular motion will be demonstrated by Aristotle to be perpetual. Is this therefore in time or not? For if it is not in time, time is not the number of every motion. But if it is in time, how is that in time which time does not transcend? But, okay, to this we reply that because there is always another and another motion, and never the same according to number, on this account it is possible to assume a time greater than that which is assumed. With respect, however, to things which are said to be perpetual according to essence, such as always wholly subsist at once, as intelligibles and true beings, these possess also an energy always subsisting wholly at once, and are above time, being entirely measured by eternity. But with respect to a celestial essence, it is indeed essentially immutable. So the ether is essentially immutable, and if it did not sustain any change of quality, since in this case it would not have any motion nor extension in its being, it would also be evidently above time, for time is the measure of things becoming to be, and not of being. If, however, the celestial orbs impart to each other a certain perfection according to their different configurations, as is evidently the case in the moon, these also will be measured by time. So even if they're incorruptible, there's still, mutation or changes in their relative aspects. For that which participates of generation must necessarily possess something generable and corruptible, but it is not necessary that it should possess this essentially. But by Aristotle and his followers, who always philosophize from clear evidence, the evidence of the celestial orbs is considered as unbegotten and above time, but their motions are asserted to be temporal. So similar to creatures with essences that aren't themselves motions, so all ensouled creatures, the motions that represent their essences are in time and are corruptible, even if their essence essentially is not a motion. Nevertheless, it can be contained in time because of the energies that express that essence. Perhaps, therefore, it may be better to say that with respect to the extremes, that is, things entirely immovable and things perfectly mutable, eternity is the measure of the former, time of the latter, but that of middle natures, such as soul and perpetual bodies, there are certain other middle measures, which are without a name. Okay, interesting. And we're really kind of crawling through this chapter. I have to do some chores real quick, so we'll have to end early today. But Let me not lose my place. There we are. Okay, page 170. Yep, we will pick this up if all goes well tomorrow. Thanks for participating. You really have to like wade through a lot of unclear and not necessarily obviously useful material to get those little gems, but there's been enough gems in this whole work where I'm still motivated to finish it. It'll be a while, but we'll come back to this, like I said, tomorrow. So take care. God bless.